Welcome to Your2Dads. I'm your co-host Daryl Platty, and I'm going to go off on a rant today. Now, like many of you, I woke up this morning and seen the news of what happened in Las Vegas last night. Pretty hard to take. Pretty hard to sift through what happened. Now we're at the stage of, okay, we're starting to get the counts, and so far 58 plus dead, 500 plus wounded. I mean, what do you say to that? I mean, I can't imagine what that must be like. And my opinion here, what I'm saying, is no different than any of you out there. It's really easy to try to imagine what that'd be like, but it's just falls short of actually what it must be like. So the question is what leads somebody to do something like that? And this is something I've been thinking about for a while now. I see a lot of ramping up of emotions, acting on emotions, breaking down of communication. I mean, it's from Antifa to beat a dead horse here, Black Lives Matter, to the alt-right, to these, everyone goes off into their corners where they just join an echo chamber. You know, you turn on the news, some people like, Chris Matthews, MSNBC type, some people like Tucker Carlson, Fox News type, and there's very little objective middle ground media. I mean, if at all. I mean, we just filmed a show on Korea, and I spent over 20 hours of doing research on Korea. I know more about Korea than I ever thought I would, just because I want to try to figure out what's going on there from a historical point of view, understanding their culture and history, to what's going on today, the geopolitical influences in the community, and how everything is connected and related to one another. The one thing I see a lot of is polarization between the left and the right. You're pro-Trump, you're pro-Hillary, you're pro-socialism, pro-capitalism, you're Christian, you're atheist, you're white privilege, or you're Black Lives Matter, you're Antifa, or you're free speech, but then you're called hate speech, and then you're called whatever else in between. The psychological diagnosis of narcissism has probably never been as high as it's been in human history. Maybe that's got something to do with everyone's on Facebook, everyone's on Twitter, YouTube. Everyone has a platform where they can spout off what they think. But not too many people, from what I see, actually try to be objective and bring us away from the far left and the far right to the middle, where most of us are. If you look at the definitions of a classic liberal versus a classic conservative, they're so similar, it's weird. So what are dividing us? It's an ideology, preying on the human necessity of wanting to be right versus get it right. The lack of information. It's so hard to figure out what is actual raw information, raw data, versus what is opinion. And then you got to sift through that. It's very difficult. And the way society's constructed. We're all, overcome with work, debt, bills, responsibilities, raising a family, being there for our spouses, and then at the end of the day, trying to find an area where we can just be ourselves and relax and unwind, because we get to do it all over again the next day, and that's hard. I don't know about you, but I like watching some South Park, Family Guy, Married with Children, just Hell's Kitchen. I mean, I just wrestling, or just a documentary on something that's weird, It's anything to turn my mind off, to unwind. So then when you come across someone who asks you a question about healthcare or, Trump or any of these issues, the debt ceiling, what's going on in Congress, or racism, running wild, and police brutality, and it's so hard to tell somebody, I don't know. It's like those 3 words are just lost on people anymore. Someone asks you a tough question like, what is your solution to the healthcare issue? You just have to say something. And you're just going to say something of the last thing that you heard that you slightly agree with, or you'll repeat something that you mostly disagree with to form your argument, and with very little thought of your own going into it, because you don't have the research to do your own thought. So what happens when you have a society that feels that by watching the news, which is mostly now opinion based, and the companies are profit driven, and those same people tell you how informed they are? There's something with saying I don't know when asked a question that's liberating, because it gives you the opportunity to get out of a question that you actually don't know the answer to, and allows you the opportunity to go and research and do some thinking for yourself, then come back to that person and say, this is what I think. They say this, but I think this. I think it's a little bit of here, a little bit of here. Like my co-host would say, it's like a Chinese menu. You take a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B, and you make something that you want. We just don't have that anymore. It's like you have to just pick from this or this, and then form your opinion based on that. And it's not even your opinion. It's, well, I like that guy. Something about him, they look trustworthy or attractive. They put a good-looking man and a good-looking female, and they have a team of writers and researchers to back up and form their opinion. They got someone speaking in their ear through a microphone that keeps them on point and makes them win every argument. It's like set up to fail for their host or their guest, So it just wins you over. So I'm going to borrow their opinion, and the next time someone asks me what I think, I'll have an answer, and I'm just going to repeat verbatim what I heard on last night's news. And I'm not demonizing that. It's because, like I said, it's so hard to have the time to research on an issue that really doesn't impact you. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but the point is where's the time? Where's the time to research this stuff? So what am I getting at? I started with what happened in Vegas last night. What if what you see on the news, what you see on social media, isn't reality, but you believe it? Then does that create reality because you believe it? And then you go home at the end of the day and you turn on the news to your favorite channel, and they're telling you more and without you being aware of it, you're living in an echo chamber where they're telling you what to think. You adopt it as reality, and then you turn on it again the next day, and they're just reinforcing what you think because they're pushing their agenda, because they're not in business to tell you the news objectively. They're in business to keep the ratings up so they can sell time slots to advertisers so they can make a profit, because they're all millionaires, who own these, news corporations. And there's only, last I checked, it was 6, but really, it's when the ethics are the same, is there a difference between these businesses when it's all profit driven? Who's in business to tell you the truth? So what happens if you live in a world where you think, if you watch Fox News, that liberals are just going crazy and they're planning some massive anti-government attack November 4th, or that everything is being divided amongst races and sexes and genders and economic statuses, and that you're under attack. If you're a white male heterosexual who makes a decent living, or in Christian, you're under attack by everybody else that isn't like you. What does that do? What does that do if you believe that and you go out into the world? What does it do if you believe that Trump is a fascist, Trump is a racist, and Trump is a sexist? Trump is the evil capitalist who is looking out for his crony buddies and doesn't have your best interest, and you think that most of the country, not by popular vote, obviously, but electoral vote wise, most of the country supported this clown. And where are we heading? So, if you believe in these extreme, one polarity or the other, what kind of impact is it going to have on your life? The shooter is, mid-60s, white male. As of now, we don't quite know what his political affiliation was, what he identified as, either Republican or Democrat or Independent. But I'm already seeing a lot of stuff on social media saying, white male must have been a Trump supporter, must have been racist. And, okay, well, I can throw that back at you and say, well, that doesn't make sense because he shot up a country music festival, which stereotypically means that there are a bunch of, Trump supporter, white racist. That's the stereotype. And I'm against all stereotypes. But unfortunately, stereotypes only exist because there's some truth in there. Whether it's a small minority, but they get the attention, so therefore it's believed. And that comes back to my original point of thinking for yourself. And how hard is it to think for yourself? It's very hard. It's something that you're not taught as a child, typically. I wasn't taught to think for myself as a child. It's not a lesson that my parents were taught. It's not something that was handed down. If anything, racism is handed down. Bigotry, bias, prejudice. Those things are usually typically handed down from generation to generation. And it's not until the individual goes out into the real world they discover that, this isn't what I'm seeing. What I was taught, what I was raised, doesn't pertain to real life living on a day-to-day basis when I interact with other people. And I'll pose a question. For the people who identify as right of center or far right, when you go grocery shopping, when you go to the mall, when you go to a gas station, when you go out in public anywhere, how many people confront you, or are you confronted, or are you faced with, do you run across that, identifies as a, left-wing radical group, like Antifa, or a racist, a group like Black Lives Matter, who say that they have the best interest of their community, but they really don't, because there's a lot of people in that group that don't do much critical thinking of their own. So it's very troubling. It's very troubling for me to see this, because obviously what happened last night in Vegas is inexcusable. As an adult, you are responsible for your actions. We all are. And that includes what you think. Like, just to end my rant on that. If you're not thinking for yourself, who's thinking for you? And if you're not questioning their authority, you're certainly not questioning your own authority pertaining to, why do I think what I think? Have I vetted this information that's been given to me properly? And if you're not doing those things, then how can you sit there and say that you're speaking the truth and that you're saying what you think? Because you're not. You're speaking somebody else's truth, and you're saying what somebody else thinks, and you're speaking on someone else's authority, and inherently that means you are brainwashed. And what do you do then?